Hello, my friends. Live from London. I extended my trip here, so I'll be here another few weeks. So we're going to keep trying to do lives when we can. Sort of been going back and forth with Jon on finding times. Glad we're able to do it here at the usual time. I'll get him on here in a second. Got some great questions this week. Discord's really popping off. Lots of really good discussions, actually. There's some questions that I think we'll get into today that have been discussed a lot on the Discord as well, so check that out. And it seems like you guys are sharing this stuff a lot because we keep getting, even when we're not doing episodes in the week, we're still getting lots of podcast downloads, and the YouTube's starting to get some picking up, so appreciate you guys showing love in all these places. So let me grab Jon. Hey, what's up, dude? How are you?
Let's go. We back.
Like we never left.
I've missed. Every time we go a week without, I'm just like, I don't have an anchor to the week.
I know, man.
I'm not doing the Conversations podcast over the summer either, so we have a little summer break on that. So there's less anchors to the week. Feels a little bit. There's some positives to it, like a little bit more loose scheduling, but I missed it. That's all here to say.
I know, man. I miss it. I miss you. I was just saying I'm going to be back in a few weeks. I extended my trip by another week because it's been great out here.
Nice.
But yeah, let's try to do this again at the normal time next week as well.
Yeah, it should be good.
Move things around a little bit, make sure that happens. Obviously, the time difference makes things a little crazier than usual. But yeah, man, somebody was asking me about these because we all have friends that are not music related, and you have friends and I have friends that are not music, and those friends are like, "Are you doing that?" I've watched it a couple times, but I don't really know what you guys are talking about. So it seems like other people like it, but I don't know. I was like, yeah, you have no obligation to watch us talk about transient
or to like it.
Yeah, it's all good. But people ask,
"What up, Aaron?" Shout out Aaron Forbes.
What's up, Aaron? And I was telling a friend of mine that they're asking how it's going, and I was like, you know what? It just became this regular thing that was, like you said, anchored the week, especially when everything was super locked down, which we might be going into again. Obviously, I like the idea of not talking about COVID all that much because it makes these things more timeless. But certainly that was the genesis for a lot of this. I think it was kind of the cliche that during lockdown, everybody either started a podcast or learned how to bake bread or, one of a number of other things. But yeah, man, there's something really nice and regular about this. And it's interesting that the Discord has kind of taken on a mind of its own. There's almost 500 people on there, and people asking really good questions and sharing lots of cool information. And a few of the things that people asked this week there have been great discussions on the Discord about it. But yeah, man, it's
anything
cool
on there that we should touch on today, and anything come to mind from the Discord that you feel is appropriate?
Well, there was a discussion on the Discord a while back, and somebody asked today. Wesley asked it actually over on the LiveWithMattRad Instagram. Ergonomics in the studio. The question here was, I see Jon has a very mid-century modern looking desk chair and a relatively low monitor screen. I would have guessed he would have a crazy supportive computer chair and an eye-level screen so he's not hunching. Just basically a question about ergonomics. And there were a lot of discussions about this on the Discord, 3 or 4 weeks ago, maybe it was 2 months ago. I don't know. It was a while back. And I jumped in a little bit because I've tried a few different things. I have not tried like the standing desk because obviously that's a little more difficult with studio speakers.
Speaker height, yeah.
Yeah, because there's so much that gets dialed in a very specific place. But there is something that I think the fundamental thing, and then please go off on it because I know you've thought about it a lot. You probably think about it still. I think that the truth is sitting in a chair is just not good for one's body. As I do that and I like sit up straighter. And I think a lot of people don't have the core and lower back strength to support themselves for many, many hours. I'm not an expert on these things, obviously. And there's debate amongst smarter people than me about how to deal with sitting for long periods or a job that requires that, how much you should avoid that, how much you should take breaks for your physical health and all that. It's a really tough topic because I think almost everybody has some sort of ergonomic challenges when they make records, because there's a lot of sitting in the same position, a lot of hunching over, a lot of forgetting that you're in a that you're in a tough spot, and it's really just not good for your body to be sitting in a chair. I mean, I think there's books about it, and people talk about sitting is the new smoking, and all this thing about people sitting in offices for 8 hours a day and how bad it is for our posture and our back. So yeah, I don't know. Do you want to kind of?
I have a lot to say. Yeah. I go regularly to a physical therapist because I have a bad back. Without getting into too much detail, when I was 21, 22, I got into a bad car accident and I broke my spine. I fused two vertebrae together. So at the lower portion of my back, the L1 and L2 vertebrae, they are one. So I have chronic back pain, and I have sorted that out regularly with this physical therapist, and where a lot of it is talking about the rebuilding of strength in the lower back. And as Matt knows from our sprint day, I'm very unflexible, and I could never, as an adult or a young adult or a teenager, touch my toes.
At the time,
now I can touch. At the time, now I can touch the floor now from physical therapy. So I am well excited and can talk a lot about my physical therapy experience. But I sent my physical therapist, Glenn Gomez, a picture of my chair because he asked for it. He asked for a picture of my chair and how I sit, and he gave me a double thumbs up to my how I should be sitting in the chair. So I have a kind of a barometer for it. Like, I know how I should be sitting, and that it works for extended periods of time to the eye of my physical therapist, right? So we talked about this week. I was just there on Friday, and we talked about sitting in an uncocked position. So you're not like trying to run, right? You shouldn't be in a position where your feet are ready to get to run, right? They shouldn't be underneath your butt, for example, and crossed. Flat on the floor under your knees. There's no way to trigger the brain to think that you're about to run, like evolutionary wise, right? If your legs are in a running position, your brain thinks I'm about to go into said.
How does one get into a running position while sitting? I'm not sure. I can't visualize
you'd put your left foot.
Like your feet go just under your chair, basically. Like you're swinging
under
back.
your chair. Yeah. Like that would leaning in like that. That shows that's how you would start hunching and leaning into the computer screen versus sitting up straight with your feet perpendicular to your knees. That is a restful position where your spine is upright and not cocked. It's not ready to move, and it's not rounded like you're hunched. So right now I'm hunched and I go down. It's a rounding of the spine. So there's got to be this in between. And not all ergonomic chairs do that for you, right? So I don't think it's chair specific. I think there are chairs that will give you more incentive to do that. But a lot of it's like you said, core support. I had a very weak core since my back was broken. So I was taught to, and it's something that everyone should think about and actually be curious about. When you sit, when you're resting, is your tongue up against the roof of your mouth, or is it floating in your mouth? And if your tongue is up against the roof of your mouth, your core is more supported. So you should always be sitting with your tongue up against the root. That is a core building exercise that you can do all the time, right? So think about that for a second. I was floating for most, and then ever since I learned this about 6 months ago, I'm very conscious of it, and now I'm always, even when I'm breathing, if you're doing nasal breathing, you can keep your tongue, like so when I'm rowing and I'm doing nasal breathing, I'm focusing on keeping my tongue up against the roof of my mouth. That's how I'm building core strength. And that's how I can do 3-minute planks and couldn't do 30-second planks like months ago.
I've never heard that. I've never thought about that. I'm very conscious of that, but I'll think about that and look into that.
Think about that. It's kind of amazing.
I would say that I would say I'm certainly not an expert in this field. There's lots of good information and bad information out there on the internet. I've looked into a lot of this stuff because, of course, years and years of sitting and having some neck and back things and talking to people like you. I think more than anything else, the thing that almost everybody can benefit from is just learning how to sit upright and just not slouching and hunching. And then at the same time, doing exercises that strengthen your core. And that can be almost any.
Those are in the reverse order, is what I would say from my learning experience in physical therapy. There's no way that you can be conscious of maintaining upright position regularly while sitting if you don't strengthen your core.
Absolutely.
there's no, it's impossible. I mean, I'm guilty of it. I've been a huncher my whole life, but based on not being, I just didn't have, I had a broken spine, and I didn't know about it.
You're literally broken.
Literally broken. Like I shrunk an inch. Like I used to be 5'11" and a half, and I am now 5'10" and a half. Like I actually shrunk an inch because my vertebrae. It's like I've been through the closest to worst besides getting paralyzed. And I was paralyzed for a few days. Like I couldn't feel my legs during this accident.
Wow.
And it was like tests. I wasn't allowed to, leave the hospital until I can walk up and down 2 steps. This was a long time ago. My memory might be foggy, but I think it was 3 or 4 days, almost to a week of, I couldn't, they did the reflex test on your kneecap. And like, I didn't feel anything for days, maybe longer. And my parents, everyone was unsure. Then I was in a back brace for 6 months. And I feel like a bit of a miracle in a sense, like the fact that I can even walk, and also like that changed my perspective on life. Like I became a lot more optimistic, and just
right.
A lust for living, and then cut to 3 years ago, was in a broken sternum car accident, and same thing again. Like thank God I'm that fully healed. My chest is fully healed. Even Friday we double checked, but the back has never fully healed. Backs are really hard to heal. So I think about this a lot. It's an interesting question to bring up on a live, because, but all I can say, which is, I interrupted you talking about what you were about to say. The sitting up thing is based on core support. So just do planks, like do isometric exercises. These are easy body weight things. These are things where you lay on your back and you put your knees up above, and then you hold your hand against them, and you just put a little bit of pressure, isometric, so you're focused, and like see if you could do it for 30 seconds to a minute. I couldn't do it without shaking for 30 seconds, and now I could do 3 minutes. Like I'm case in point of someone that's like half lazy, half loves to work out. I'm not like the every day I really want to do something, but I bring myself to do 30 minutes most days. Like this core support stuff, I thought I was a goner on. Like I can't do yoga, and now I can do these poses for long extended periods of time.
That's what I was gonna say. Is I think there's a lot of different ways to get good core strength, from yoga to other compound things like sprinting to, if you want to get into deadlifts and squats and things like that, just anything where you're working your body out. Yoga is probably the easiest one that almost everybody should be doing, whatever you're.
That's another one. I learned how to, in physical therapy, I learned how to do a squat properly, and now I can do like 3 sets of 30, like very well, and with no back pain. I always thought I couldn't do squats for lower back because I had such bad lower back pain and such constant pain, but I just wasn't doing it right. Yeah. And I didn't know where to load,
and you had to build the strength.
Where to hinge. Yeah, build strength, but it starts with, right, it starts with posture first and form. Yeah. And then if you're doing a squat right, there should be no lower back pain. It should, in fact, alleviate the pain if you're hinging right.
Yep.
All this stuff is so important. So to me, sitting is almost the least important, because by building this strength, you sit better more regularly. Like I'll notice my posture going away at dinner if I'm drinking champagne or something, right? Like the more I'm less mindful of it because other things are coming into the foreground and I'm getting lazy. That's when I notice my posture. But like today, I just played tennis. I feel strong today. My back is at a normal pain of 2. It's always painful, but I'm sitting up straight today and I have no feeling that I'm going to fall. That comes from the constant doing of the stretches and the exercises.
Yeah. I would say the last thing I'll say on this, that this may be incorrect, what I'm about to say. So feel free if there's people that want to debunk it. I have found that this idea of having lower back support in a chair, any kind of lower back support, is just taking away from where you should be using your own strength for it. So actually, I find that I try as little as possible to use any back support in a chair and actually just use my core to keep myself strong. And I think the people that can't do that, and when I can't do that, it's just because my strength isn't there. And so I should strengthen that up, because as soon as you start just doing this and like just you're hunching, you're just putting undue pressure on your back and your spine and your neck and all of that. So I actually use a drum throne for the most part in the studio. So it just doesn't have a back. So I have to sit up straight.
I used to use a yoga ball chair in my old studio. That I wound up finding out I was hunching more, but now mixed with my new practices, maybe that would even be good again. I don't actually know, but let's use that to pivot a bit, because I think that the sitting upright, by default, keeps you more attentive and alert and focused on the task at hand, right?
I think so too.
So you're having that elongated spine. Maybe the vagus nerve plays a role in here in cognition and
you're just active. Your body is active.
So I'm imagining that's like all of these things are positive, but it comes from to a creative brain. This is what this podcast is for. I feel like that's a counterintuitive way of thinking about like, oh, we're going to make better songs and mixes because our core is getting supported. Like, let's correlate those two together. Without a doubt, you will. You'll have more confidence. You'll appear more confident to people around you because of this. Like, I'm just spitballing. I've never thought about this. But you're going to, people will wind up trusting you more. You'll feel more confident in your own moves. You'll hear better because your attention is focused more on the task at hand. Take breaks so your perspective is coming in fresh each time. So don't think about like, am I sitting right? Think about how many times I'm going to stand up. And don't stand up to work. Stand up to take breaks. We already know that 45 minutes or to 90-minute bouts of learning is like, or hardcore work is all our brains can even handle without a break anyway. So work on sitting for 45 minutes, then an hour and 15, then 90 minutes, and then stop. Like, you don't have to sit. Like, you shouldn't sit for more than 90 minutes because we shouldn't be working that intensely for more than 90 minutes without a 15-minute, 30-minute break. So get up and get water, right? I think we talked about this a few months ago on an episode where I stopped putting water next to my desk. I leave it in my kitchen, or I leave it somewhere else where I have to get up to get it because I get thirsty often and I like to stay hydrated. So I need to force myself to break to get water. That could be 2 minutes. That could be while I'm bouncing or committing stems through outboard gear, right? That's normally when it is. And then that might turn into, oh, I forgot I got to go do laundry, or, oh, I got to marinate meat to cook later, or that will turn into another task because I'm taking myself out of the work position. Maybe that turns into stretches. I'm sure, Matt, that happens to you. Maybe you'll just start stretching or doing push-ups, or, I'll just go into a plank because I need to get some blood flowing in my head. Like, these things can't happen if you're just staring at the computer wondering if the chords are right.
Yes, I would say studio push-ups are definitely a thing. There's been a lot of projects I've worked on where it's like, all right, dudes, let's just go get some exercise and we're all just going to sit down and do push-ups and, get competitive and whatever. But it's important.
Yeah, like late night sessions. I actually find that during late night, like if you got to do the long haul, which we talk against, or I talk against a lot of the time, when you have to do it, I think push-ups are more effective than an espresso shot to get through another bout of work. To get through that late night, like, oh, we're waiting for an approval. I think push-ups are actually way more effective. Squats, like full body compound exercises, like that wakes up the blood. Like, I wouldn't do that before going to sleep. Like, I wouldn't be able to sleep after getting the blood rushing during doing 200 push-ups or something.
There's a couple things to say, and I love that this stems from what sort of ergonomic chair setup, and the reality is you need to get the rest of your physical health together, and that will be much more important than what kind of chair you get. Like I said, I use a drum throne, but my core strength is much better than it was when I was 10 years ago or so, and so I can work a lot longer, and my back's a lot better, and I'm older. I remember reading, and this is common knowledge, but friends of mine that were professional poker players, and then people I know who did competitive chess, people who are just sitting there, those folks burn serious calories, and the ones who have better physical health are able to play for longer and concentrate longer, even though you don't think of those things as physical activities. When you're sitting there and focusing and you want to be at your best, you got to be in good physical health no matter what you're doing, even if producing records or mixing records or whatever doesn't involve a lot of jumping jacks. Like, the better your physical health is, the longer you will be able to be focused and capture those moments or get things done or be efficient or whatever. So, anecdotally speaking, the days that I work out before I mix more efficiently. I mix quicker. I'm more confident in sending the first pass. When I've had wine or like had a long dinner the night before and I'm lazy, I woke up too late, I still do my meditation, but I don't do any physical activity, I'm like second guessing mix moves. It's anecdotal, but that's my life experience. The minute I come back from tennis, I'm on, ready to work, or I do at minimum of a 30-minute row every other day I'm not playing tennis, or I'm doing squats and other compound exercises on my floor or on a yoga pad. Like,
I get, again, anecdotal, but I'm sure there's data here.
It's true for me too. I mean, I say this to people a lot, where I don't drink a lot anymore, and mostly that's because on any given day I'm going to be making music, and I now know the difference between I've done it enough where I know the difference between being at 95% and being at 100%. And being at 95% can mean missing a moment that's happening in the studio and my brain's not quite quick enough. And I want to capture those moments. Like, I don't want to, there's certainly days where it's fun to smoke a joint and make beats and do whatever. But if I need to be, as one of my managers back in the day said, the adult in the room, the person who's really focused on what everybody else is doing and making sure, being a producer or being the running a session, I need to be 100%. And I love having a glass of wine, and I love, going out late, and I love doing those things, but I just know what it does to me the next day. And so physical health, not being hungover, all these things for me. I mean, I know a lot of people that love creating that way too. So
I love that, but I'm on such a champagne kick. So, and you talked about this, like I'm going on deep dives of champagne. Doesn't mean I'm drinking it every night of the week, but 2 or 3 nights, which is different than I used to be, more of a once a week drinker or twice a month. I'm drinking more than usual, but not excessively. It's no more than 2 glasses, but it definitely affects the next day. But I love champagne.
You keep putting up #1 albums and shit. You just keep drinking that champagne. You do what you got to do.
I do not drink the day before. No, wait. I drank the day before that project, but I didn't drink that day. I don't know. Actually, I don't want to talk about it. I might be lying. I actually got called on a Saturday afternoon to mix 3 records for that, and it dropped Monday, and I was drinking that afternoon because I had a staycation in Santa Monica when that happened, when Ron Perry called me and was like, yo, we got more. I was like, oh no, I booked the staycation, but I just did it anyway. Like, I was staying in a hotel in Santa Monica, but mixing it at home because I was already booked in the hotel and I didn't want to not stay in the hotel. So anyway.
Well, you want to tell us, there's a bunch of people who wanted to congratulate you on the Kid Leroy album and ask questions about the songs. Anything you want, because obviously you there's so many people, including our friend Tizio worked on it. A bunch of people worked on it. There's Serban mixes. You mixed the big song that really broke him, and then you've mixed some more on this. And you want to talk more about that?
It's a bit of a roller coaster, actually, emotionally. We should talk about it. Let's spend some time, because I want to be honest about it. It's weird. It's weird as a young mixer to work with young artists, and you get success with them. Then because of their success level, there's more of an opportunity for them.
Let's do it slow. So you were working on the Kid Leroy. You did not the very first thing, but the EP that had Without You on it.
That had the Without You and So Done, which were both like top 40. Without You was number 8.
Big hit, and the Miley remix and the whole thing.
And it's #1 at Hot AC, so it's like playing on Hot AC all the time. There's a lot of success there. And then when it came time to do the biggest hit with Justin Bieber, the team, and I'm friends with the team, so I know what happened, and it went to Serban, which is like a bit of an obvious move. And I don't disrespect the move. I get why one would do that, but I still question to myself, like, but that song by default is a hit, right?
Yeah.
So why not have the same guy or same girl that had the success up to this point do that? There's no chance that melody with those 2 artists on it is not going to do what it did. Yeah. I definitely wouldn't ruin the chances, and someone else adjacent to me would not ruin the chances of its success.
I could have mixed that song, for sure.
You could have, exactly. So anyway, that's an emotional roller coaster. It doesn't make it's not personal. None of these choices. I'm not sad about it. I'm bummed that I don't have that credit, because I had the other ones, and it would have been nice to go and whatever. But what's more exciting is getting to be a part of the story of a young artist and their upward trajectory, because the dude's 17 and he's really talented. I like him. We got to FaceTime on this last mix bout, the 3 out of the 5 or 6 that came out. Yep. And he's fucking nice, and he's appreciative, and he works hard, and like, I fuck with this kid. Like, I think he's so good, and I'm stoked to be a part of it. As an accolade, it's my first #1 album. that I've mixed more than one song on. I was corrected by my manager that Harry Styles' last album went #1 and I mixed one song on it. But I mixed 9 on this project, so that feels like a bit more of an involvement in the sound. So it's my first #1 in a lot of ways. I've never had a #1 single because that's really fucking hard. I've had a #3. And I'm in a position, that's why it's worth discussing here, is like, I have a few hits. I have a bunch of Hot 100 songs, but I only have 2 top 10s, and I have probably 4 or 5 top 20s, and maybe like 10 plus top 40s. Like, I'm in a very, I get some success, and I work on a lot of new artists. So when one of them takes off, it gets me stoked, to be honest. Yeah. I love a couple of people are commenting on Lonely and Fucked Up. That's my favorite mix. And that's also my engineer Josh's favorite song and mix on that shit. He was so pumped on that one. That one was a first pass. I got that at like 12:30 at night, got it back to them at 1:30, 2:30, something like that. It was either 12:30 and then a 1:30 or 1:30. And I was up waiting for it. It came in. I had an hour to mix it. We had to have it mastered by 3 a.m. And I nailed that one. And I was pumped because I was resting up. I think I was watching The Mighty Boosh, which is one of my favorite shows ever, on the sofa, and I was just ready for it. I was like, texting with the producer and just waiting for stems to come through. And so just every once in a while, you get that late night thing, and I'm ready for it because of my breaking and my ability to say, like, okay, I'm not going to do anything else that's going to take some bandwidth away from me. I'm going to prepare. I'm going to watch a funny show that takes no effort to follow. And someone knows The Mighty Boosh. Yeah, The Mighty Boosh is probably my favorite show ever. So that's, I don't know, anything else that we should talk about there?
There were a few questions specifically about that mix. Do you have anything on that? Somebody even just asked there. Can you talk about the mix at all? Was there anything challenging about it? Who's the producer? What was the
Internet Money produced, I think, 2 or 3 of the ones that I did. All of them, maybe.
Was it Nick Mira?
Yeah, but this one was Taz. I think they're both. But I think Taz did that one. And then Attention was I think Taz and Fuck Han was part of the crew. Han. So those two, like Attention and Situation, are a little more like traditional. Like there's a sample and there's a keyboard part with drums and an 808 and then vocals. But then Lonely and Fucked Up had guitars, and it was a bit more of like a seemingly rock production. I don't know. That one went so fast. How do we talk about that? It sounded all right. A lot of the stuff comes in definitely sounding unfinished, in a good way, meaning there's headroom. Like when I get stuff from the Kid Leroy camp, it's not so like dense and limited where I don't have any headroom. It's a lot of
smashing the rough mixes to make them. Yeah.
So there's a lot of headroom, which for me feels like I get to do a lot. Like there's a lot of room to elevate the sonics without changing too much. So you're sending it back. You're not sending it back to surprise them. You're sending it back so they say, whoa, that sounds crazy, but it reminds them of what they had. Especially that late in the game, you're not trying to reinvent anything. But I do feel like on those 3 records, I did a lot of heavy lifting, but nothing that's like I had to fix your bullshit. Like it came in tight. Sounds good. Yeah. Vocals are where I spend the most amount of time on that stuff because his voice is so interesting to me. Yeah. And he has this like kind of Kurt Cobain rock punk edge to him and this grit. And I think if you do, like when I hear Stay, I think that Serban's mix on him, I think close, he sounds too smoothed out to me. He sounds better than Justin on that record, sonically, but he's taking out a lot of the mid-range, which is kind of the thing that Serban does, where I think that Leroy needs to sound a bit more gritty, but still smooth and polished on the super top end, which Serban did perfectly. So I want to hear more grit. So when I work on him, I'm doing a lot of like surgery to the vocal to get rid of that mid-range and then finding sweet spots where we've talked about before with that Spectre plugin.
Yeah, saturating really the right parts of the mid-range.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of time like second guessing myself, but not in a negative way, like seeing if it's better in this region, seeing where he's pushed forward, because I actually think that he's going to be one of the voices of our time. And if I have I take my job really seriously in the sense of a responsibility of uncovering like artistry. And I think that if I have any say in the records, like I did 9 on that project, I want my mixes to be as true to his voice as possible. Yeah. So I spend the most amount of time on the vocal. I mean, you're getting an 808 from Internet Money. Like, what am I going to do with the 808? Like, I've probably boosted some low end. I might have put the gain station on and distorted it a bit more to get upper harmonic saturation for the phone. A lot of their 808 sounds have that already because they're good at that. The drums, I just try to make that shit knock. You know, nothing soft about Leroy records. You know, he's got that grit, so the drums should hit. Is the Unfair Child and the BT7 on all of them? Yes. Every song that you've heard me mix has the Unfair Child and the BT7 on it to some degree. So we should almost never ask that question again. It's always on it. I always find a way. The BT7 is always on the vocal, and I don't move the needle. It's just for tone. I wind up having to do less work after the tubes hit a lot of recordings. It's going to soften some peaks and add some harmonic information. Yeah. I don't know what else to say. It was a sprint on that one, and it paid off. But like we talked about earlier with the sitting and stuff, like I'm preparing for that sprint. Like I know I know the deadline. I don't have the files and it's 1 a.m. Like I'm preparing for it. I'm not bullshitting around. I'm not getting high. Like trying to be the adult in the room that delivers a pass, and it's either that one or a quick note. You know?
Yeah. Your head's in the game with it, and it's an artist you've worked with. It's a vocal you've worked with. It's a vocal you know well. You know where the challenges are. You know what you're trying to get out of it. And even, you know, what we talked about a few minutes ago, you've heard a few other A-level people's take on it, and you know what's possible and how you want it to fit into the project. And so you're about as well prepared as you could be for it.
Yeah. And also on more on the mix, things are coming to mind. Like when I got the rough mix, there was a ton of verb on him. I think it's kind of like a lazy, just put the send up because you want that verb feel on a song like that, kind of like a Juice WRLD approach to that style and genre. But what I'm doing on that song is lowering the verbs like substantially, but saturating them to give the perceived energy on the verb that creates that back wall density, but lets him be more forward, like more of a pop mix, more of a I hear every word, he's the star. But it's not a dry vocal. There is that density of the verbs that is in there rough, right? To understand, you know, I'm taking the cue from their mix and saying, oh, you did that for a reason because the other songs they did were drier. So I know that they're going for this kind of thing. I believe my friend, Dennis Koziak, I mix with him a lot. He's, he recorded that one last minute. So if he's putting the effects on, that means he's dialing it in with Leroy. Like there's a reason for this. So I'm not going to change this, but I think I have a better way to approach it to keep that vocal up front because that's what I want from him because he sounds so interesting to me.
Monkey Harper just asked the question I was going to ask you to clarify. So will you actually take the reverb stem and saturate it in order to make it richer, but then you'll turn it down?
Well, this wasn't it was a send. It wasn't printed, so I have, if it's not printed, it's better because then I can, if you're saturating verbs, you'll bring up the decay. So sometimes you have to shorten the time.
Right. Because again, saturation will compress and it's.
Yep. And sometimes it's good. Sometimes if you're turning it down, but the length it feels longer. But you got to mess with that. I was not using the Spectre. Sometimes I do. On that, I was using a Goodhertz new plugin that I like. I had the beta before. I think it just dropped. It's called Toop.
There's been a lot of talk about this on the, I believe, on the Discord. Bradley, the Slow Hand Sound, who does the show notes for these, has been talking about the new Goodhertz saturator plugin. You like that as well?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah. I use it.
They make good stuff.
It's my go-to tape. It's my favorite. I mean, they're one of my favorite plugin companies in general. But it's the closest thing to tape I've heard without like the what you think tape is. Like when you put the ATR, the Studer,
it looks good.
Those plugins, they look good.
The animation is nice.
but what you're noticing, what you notice when you understand what tape sounds like is that's just glorified EQ. Like when they use the biasing knob, that's not what tape sounds like. That sounds like EQ. And a little bit of saturation. Toop is doing very subtle, seemingly correct emulations of tape and tube. That's why it's tube.
They're manipulating harmonics in a way that makes sense to your ears. I haven't used tube yet, but I've heard good things about it. I'll probably get it tonight, actually.
You should. When I take tube and I turn up, it's a funny word, funny name, and I turn up the input 10, 20, 50%, the sound just does what you imagine tape to do. It doesn't EQ the sound, doesn't change the bias of it. It saturates it. It's glowing, and the different types change the sound of that. Is it going to be more high end? Is it over bias? Is it under bias? Like, that's still in the thing, depending on the circuitry of the style you're using. And it's just more subtle. I don't, when I put a Studer or the ATR on, or I used to, I've never used that shit anymore for years. When I did, I'm like, that's not what tape sounds like. That's what people think tape sounds like. And I'm just, you know this, but I'm mixing and mastering a song through tape right now, and I'm learning what tape does. That ATR machine that I'm using, that plugin does not do that.
They do not sound the same
at all.
Yep. I learned that
let's
early
debunk. Let's debunk that plugin. That plugin is not what tape sounds like. So if you like the sound of the UAD ATR plugin, that's cool.
Yeah, great.
That's its own thing, though. That's not a tape machine.
I spent enough time. I bet if you gave me an A800 or a 827, I could actually probably calibrate it. I learned that working for Eric.
I learned that too. I don't remember how to do it.
Spending a lot of time running things through tape machines, different kinds of tape machines. I basically have never up until Saturn II and Spectre, never really liked harmonic saturators in the computer because they just don't sound like tape machines and tubes to me. I spent so much time with actual tape machines and different kinds with tube, like the Studer J37, I think, is the 4-track that, like, same model that the Beatles used on Sgt. Pepper's and all that. You open that thing up, it's a 1-inch 4-track, so it's a lot of tape information, or a lot of literal physical space on the tape for each track. And
the Waves J37.
And when you open an actual J37 up, there's like 60 tubes inside of it. So it's running something through that. And then hearing, again, like 10 years ago, the early versions of plug-in emulations, I was like, this doesn't sound anything like it. I mean, they're fine. Again, like maybe they have uses, but I was just like, I don't need to use any of these.
Yeah,
so it's only now that things like Spectre and some of these other ones
like Saturn used to be good, but Tube to me blows away the fat filter Saturn.
I'm excited for Tube. I haven't used Saturn in a while. I really just use Spectre now for that stuff. Spectre, and then if I really want to crunch, it's like Decapitator and things like that to really make things saturate. But yeah, I'm excited for Tube. Lots of good reviews. So
I use that on effects on that song. I don't know how much I'm using on it. I can't remember, but it's substantial. And then I turn the volume down, and I do that on delays. I like the Valhalla Vintage delay. It has a drive already in there, so I don't really need to add it. Like, it's an all-in-one. And then I do my filtering and shaping in the plugin itself. And then sometimes if I want the same texture that I have on the Verb, I'll put it on that just to kind of glue the effects together, but that's not an every time thing. But on that song specifically, there was a lot of reduced effects and then making more of those effects to create that density while keeping him forward. And like I said earlier, a lot more time on the vocal than anything else. The rest of it kind of came together. And I kind of have my go-to mix process, which is sending all the musical stems to my VLC tubes to get this kind of harmonic content rebuilding or reshaping that fits my aesthetic, and then I'll check if it's better with or without the plugin on. I don't always leave with or without the analog gear on. I don't always leave it on, but I always bounce the stem through it to see, and then I'll try it. I'll do a playlist maybe and check it. But a lot of the times when I do that, do some subtractive EQ, I don't do much after that. A lot, and then I'll do things on my subgroups, and so on that track it just kind of came together really fast because there was headroom.
Well, I want to point out something you said there, because a lot of people, including myself, you start hearing about someone's process and you go, oh, that's what they use, when the reality is that's what you try every time, and oftentimes you will use it, but sometimes you will not. And that's what's, we always say is use your ears. Even if you have the process that you use all the time, you still will A/B. It's like, is this right this time? Even if 9 out of 10 times or 99 out of 100, you get paid to make sure that 1 out of 100 is the better one. That's a really important thing to just point out, that even if you have your go-tos, you will still go, is this better each time? And actually use your ears.
I've been loving the Mike Dean and Acoustica collaboration on the gain station on 808s, because Mike Dean is great at 808s, and I've been using it 9 out of 10 times. And on this one song I'm just doing recently for a new artist named Toby that I've been working with, who I love, probably one of my favorite mixes in a while. And the 808 has nothing on it but Spectre doing a 60 hertz boost. Like I tried it and I was like, oh, this sounds good. And then I kept bypassing it. Just like, if it doesn't make it obviously better, like, I don't need it. Like Alex Goose, the producer and one of my best homies, like, his 808 choice was great. It going through my tube, a mix bus, and it adding that subtle harmonic to his choice was enough. And that's one of my favorite mixes. Hopefully that'll drop, I think, in a couple of weeks, and then people can talk about it if they want. But that 808 has nothing on it but Spectre, besides obviously my mix bus. And that's something to listen for. That 808 speaks. It speaks on the phone. It speaks everywhere. And I didn't,
Yeah, I feel you. Let's see if we got a few other. Here's a really, really easy one to answer. Zach asked, would you still do your job if you never had a top 100 song ever again? And it's such an obvious yes. But the reason it's obvious yes is because I didn't have them for the first 17 years I did it. And I loved it so much then. So what would stop me? I mean, I want to have lots more songs hit the Hot 100 and all that, but you gotta love it for other reasons than that, for sure. I would do this shit forever. I'm gonna do the shit forever.
I mean, that's a good question. That's a really easy answer. And I share your answer. I kind of want to say more on it, because
say more on it.
I love the fact that we got the #1 album right now. It's not going to last long. Billie just dropped her record. It's going to go #1. So it's a week, right? So thinking about people that have okay, what's the next? Again, I haven't spent any time thinking about this, but what's the next accolade level, right? So you have the #1 album for 4 months. You're like Michael Jackson level, off the wall level. However long that lasted. Well, I'm going to have a #1 album for a week. So, or the Leroy is, the whole team is. We already know that. I'd be shocked if that didn't happen. So then what? It's not a #1 anymore. So then it doesn't matter. So, right, it already didn't matter to me anymore until you brought it up. I'm already thinking about mixing Toby, who's not going to have the #1 album when it drops, because there's no chance that a young artist can get a sorry, Toby, I love you. There's very little chance of him getting the #1 album as a new artist from Toronto, Canada. It's a very slim chance. But I'm so excited about this project because of its musicality, because of its team, because of its artistry, because of its lyrics. All this stuff is what keeps us doing what we're doing. A week at #1 isn't enough to sustain the desire to do what we do. It's it's so that becomes so performative. It's going to help me get work. Yeah. So I want to lean into it for a little bit because it's cool and I want to get work, but also I'm going to get work based on, the work speaking for itself. Yeah. I mean, I think about this a lot because why do we do it? We do it because we love music, but I also love millions to billions of people listening to the songs I work on. That's
I
really love that. Will I get a plaque? Hold on, I want to answer this. Will I get a plaque? If I do, I'm sending it home to my parents. I don't want plaques in my house.
Yeah, all my plaques.
I don't have any plaques in my house.
All my plaques are at my parents' place.
Are they?
Yeah. It's just I don't know. It always I don't know how to exactly put this into words, or this is a monologue to launch into right now. But every time I've had something that's hit charts, whether it's I just reposted because one of the co-writers on "In the Name of Love," the Martin Garrix record, my dear friend Ruth Ann, she just posted her getting a billion stream plaque. So I have a song that has a billion streams. That's really cool. But that, to me, that actually means something. Obviously, it means something to career. It's a big number. But it also means that a shitload of people have enjoyed it. And that's really exciting to me. So
the most exciting part.
If I never made anything that reached a lot of people again, I think I'd be bummed about that. But in terms of like it hitting a certain number or charting for a week is based on so many other things. For that song to reach 1 billion streams, it took a number of years, but that means people listened to it for years and years. And that's really cool. Like, that's really exciting because it puts me in the position of feeling like the 13-year-old kid that was discovering Too Short and E40 or Nirvana, Green Day, whatever, those sort of like 90s hip hop and rock artists that just affected me. And so the idea that I can make things that affect a lot of other people is really cool. When I worked on, like, my first big thing was a One Direction song called Best Song Ever, which is the highest I've got on the Hot 100, number 2. And when it came out, it was, this is when iTunes was the thing. It wasn't all Spotify, and it was number 1 in like 60 something countries. And that was really, really awesome for like 36 hours. And, lots of congratulations, a lot of that. But then it was just like, that's something I did 2 months ago, and it's cool to get lots of props for it. But I already did that, and I'm doing all these other things, and that's what I'm excited about. It's a really interesting moment to feel, and it's a really beautiful thing, and really lucky, really fortunate to be involved with stuff like that. But you can't, we've talked about this in previous weeks. I think we both know people that are more successful on paper than both of us, that are just sad that they don't have the number 1 song anytime they don't have it. That are just bummed out. They're like, I just need another one. I need a hit. I need a hit. I need a hit. And those, I don't want to be those people. Like, I want to work on stuff that's exciting. Of course, I want lots of people to listen to it. But you start playing status games and start chasing numbers, you're going to be really bummed out. You're just going to be really bummed out.
Well, that's why it was a good place to go with this, is to start the conversation on Leroy, because I am bummed I didn't mix Stay. But I'm bummed I didn't mix Stay because I love that song, and I think I could have done a better job.
Yeah, and you were in a position. Where you had earned the, presumably in there's a scenario where you earned a shot to do it.
Yeah,
and you didn't get it.
Yeah, and that's why it's a bummer. If I had no connection to the team, I wouldn't be like, oh, I wish I did that. Yeah. But I am bummed, but not based on its success. A little bit. Sorry, I should stay honest. A little bit based on its success level, but also because I think I understand that record. And I think I know I do. Like, understand that synth reference point. The drums sound a little squashed to me, and they could have more length and more intensity to them. And like someone said above, Leroy sounds 5 years younger on that song. Like, I think a 17-year-old, we should start trying to make sound as old as possible, right? That's how he's going to stand the test of time. Not look back and be like, oh, he was such a baby on that song. It's like, no, that dude sounds like a man. That dude, that kid has got something special, and the more you don't show it, the less chance that he has to survive lengthy periods of time. I'm not saying that I am like the only person that can do that, but that's how I hear him, and that's how I understand his trajectory. So I am bummed that I don't have that successful song. But I'm not depressed about it, and I'm not losing sleep over it. Yeah.
Well, and this is how I think it's actually a really good example for people of how one should feel about their craft, which is, of course, it would be cool to have the song that's on the chart and whatever, but you're also like, I know what I would have wanted to do with it, and I'm excited, and I feel like I have something to offer, and you have a lot of passion about
and I'll get
you're
the
trying
chance.
to contribute. Yeah, and you will, and you've already succeeded in a lot of things. Yeah, you've already had a huge hit with him, and you've done the stuff with Khalid, and you've had other big, you've had other chart things, and you'll have many, many more. But that's where the passion should really come from. Is I feel like this is something I'm excited about creatively, and I can do something great with it. And of course, it'd be great if a bajillion people listen to the song, the version that I did, or whatever. But yeah, that's a really good way to put it. And of course, it goes without saying, Servan's amazing. He's mixed a bunch of my stuff. We all learned a ton from him. He's had more hits than probably any of us will ever have.
Ever. He's the true mix goat.
He's the goat of our lifetimes for sure.
But
so there's no shade at all in that.
No. But what I want to say on that note is that I'm learning, and I should be, open about this as I'm also learning for the people that are younger. There is something that listeners, A&Rs, managers, artists, that what they like about presence and things that I would deem harsh, that I don't like to maintain in my mixes, that I am actively practicing and injecting into my mixes the way I want to hear them. So I think that sooner than later, I will land on what I want my version of that sound to be. Yeah. And I think that Lonely and Fucked Up mix is my first kind of bigger record that I'm implementing some of this on. And I think that's why it's translating. So I'm just telling the community that I'm onto something.
You're calling your shot like Babe Ruth. And sorry, the other thing that's very important about this too is, again, to sort of meta explain what you just said. You have a perspective. You've done this for long enough that you're like, I know what I like, and it may not be what everybody else likes. If you got the chance to mix. If you got a chance and had the time and whatever to mix every song that's on the top 50 in Spotify or the top 50 in the Hot 100, and Serban got the shot to do it, and whoever else, Manny or Josh Goodwin or any of these other people, Baines and Tizio, like other friends, the public might prefer their versions of a lot of these things. And that's actually a good thing in the sense that you want to have a perspective. Your goal should not be, I want to make the thing that people already like. Your goal should be, here's what I like, and I've done this enough, and I know how to do these various things, and I want to do something creatively that makes me feel fulfilled. And I think that's a really important thing just to point out how you're talking about this is not about trying to make the thing that pleases the most people, but to make the thing that you really love, it's a big part of your passion for doing this. It's why you're a mix engineer and not, even though you're a great producer and you did songwriting, you're an instrumentalist, all this sort of shit. You found something that you feel really passionate about, and you're achieving it and you're working toward it.
Thanks for that. Hope that's translating.
It is. Well, I just wanted to explain it just in case people don't understand.
I love that. Because you know my interest, and so does most of the people that listen to this in science and understanding and philosophy. And I understand why people like a certain thing. I don't always want to give people what they like. I want to give people what they, what I think that they want.
Maybe they don't know yet that they like.
Maybe they don't know yet. Exactly. That's kind of what I'm, that's why sometimes you have to ask a better question when someone asks a question that you're like, that's not really what you're trying to get at. So when it comes to what I'm trying to harness right now, it's because I know that people want a certain thing that I don't do naturally, but I'm going to find my way to do it. That's my way, because I'm not trying to do it Serban's way, because Serban's going to beat me at Serban. We've said those words countless times on this. Manny's going to beat me at Manny. But I'm going to beat them at me. And then that's going to work on a lot of things. It's not going to work on everything, but it's going to work on a lot. And that's good enough for me. It can't work on everything.
And it's not just there's a way you do it, but there's an approach that you have, as we talked about before, where you have, a bunch of pieces of analog gear, but you use them differently than you did a year ago. And sometimes you don't use them because you're always pushing and trying to do new things. And I think it's all good things for people to understand and hear. We got another 5 minutes or so. Do we want to try to, let's see if there's like some quick little things we can, we should do a whole episode. There's a few people that asked this. Dano asked it this week, and a few other people have asked this. We should do a whole hour on assistants, being an assistant, hiring assistants, my experience as an assistant for Eric and a few other producers. I also was an assistant / engineer under the amazing producer Flood. I worked under Dennis Herring. I worked with Jakir King, a bunch of guys who've made a lot of amazing records. You have hired several assistants. You have You have a process for doing that as a mix engineer in 2021 that's probably very different than mine was in the late 2000s under Eric, who was a producer, engineer, mixer at his own studio. So I think we should do a full hour on that. So
let's do it next week.
Yeah, if we have, because that's something I want to prep for a little bit, but just to let Dano and a few other,
I can talk about that easily.
Yeah, Dano and a few other people who have asked about that, we will do that. We will do a full hour on assistants, because and something people continually ask questions about: how do I get hired? How do I get an assistant job? There's not a lot of good answers that we can give other than just keep shooting your shot. And if you make great records and meet lots of people, there's no straightforward answer. There's, sometimes you'll see on Instagram, there's places to send resumes and things like that, but it's just like, you got to just kind of do everything.
Can we actually, instead of going somewhere new, I love this quote about the Henry Ford quote. I missed it. If you'd asked the people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses.
Oh, yeah.
From Ford. So let me just do a 3-minute to end with a little riff on what I mean by what I think people want but don't know that they want when it comes to sound. Because for so many, and let's keep it in pop, R&B, hip hop territory. Let's not talk like Nirvana records and rock that did.
Let's talk about contemporary popular music, which encompasses hip hop, R&B, dance, whatever.
Just to make that distinction. Yeah. For so many, a lot of the references that people send as from decades back, like this is what they're going for, have a very full band spectrum of a frequency range. They have a full-bodied low end, all the way up to the highest of highs that are not tearing your ear off, but they're very listenable. We've talked about this a lot. Usher's Confessions comes to mind. T-Pain records. Biggie records, Hypnotize, Fergalicious,
Maserati records.
Maserati records. A lot of will.i.am records. Who is Joe Scott? That's Serban mixed. Manny for Usher, Climax. These are reference points that come in to me, and when I hear them, they sound nothing like the rough mix that is sent, because there's not a huge limiter amount, right? There's not a lot of condensing to the sound that takes the low end away by default, right? So that's why I always talk about, I actually think people want full bandwidth that also translates to small devices, right? With the new changes, we need more upper harmonics in our bass and our drums to get them to knock on a phone or on AirPods. With that understood, you could still give a substantial amount of low-end, full-bodied, low mids. In the box mixing does not favor low mids really well. So Serban made popular the somewhat scooped sound, because if you're mixing in Pro Tools in the box, to get things to be loud and present, you have to scoop out low mids.
Yep.
Well, you don't necessarily have to do that now. You could come out of the box to a converter with some sort of harmonic. You don't have to sum, or you could stay in the box, and with 32-bit loading point, there is more headroom to keep your low mids. And low mids is where the music lives. Low mids
and better
is where
saturators. Better
saturators are
plug-in saturators.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So there is low mid musical content, like the cello frequencies, for example, in the orchestra. That's where the Rhodes sits. That's where a Wurlitzer sits. That's where a piano that's below the melody sits. That's where tonality is. That's where a guitar chord sits that's low on the neck, not high on the neck, right? Where you're doing that acoustic strumming, those 90s records. All of these things are rich in harmonics, and mixes that stand the test of time now, one back then as well, all had that. And I don't understand why it's all gone. Well, I know how it got there. I don't understand why people think that is a desired sound.
Well, the people are just used to it. People are used to it.
They're now used to it, but I know this is a hard claim that if a song like Stay, let's use that for example, because the success is de facto because of the team, everyone that's on it, and the quality of the melody and the song itself and the performances by the two. If it had more low mids, more low end, was less compressed, was 4 dB quieter, in overall loudness, it would still have the success, maybe more. And maybe more for longer. So you can get all of that gushy, low mid, punchy, low end, and presence. You don't have to sacrifice one for the other. It's all about perception. And it's not about compression. Anyway.
I love that. I think I fully 100% agree. I love that Austin in the comments said, I understand almost none of this, but I'm so interested. Spend some time, listen to it again. This will be up on YouTube. I'm sure we will make a clip of this as well and put it up on the Instagram. It's on my IGTV.
Lauren, that's my point. And you can listen to it more than once.
Yeah.
Our favorite songs that we still listen to decades later don't exhaust you.
Yes.
And
I think people who weren't understanding all of the things that you said, it's okay. Go back and listen to them. Jump on the Discord, have a discussion about it. There's lots of nice people there. I think that idea of thinking about that frequency range, what you call the cello frequency range, just do some Googling. I mean, like that range has been scooped out of music for years, but actually holds a lot of weight in the emotional content of records. So I'm glad your manifesto is out there. We'll make a little clip of it. Jon, love you. Thank you as always for making the time. Appreciate all you guys sharing this and showing love. Go check out the YouTube. Give us some subscribes there. There's a couple things upcoming, and I swear we're going to do, me and Jon are going to do something together and do a live stream, whether it's Twitch or put on YouTube or something. It's coming up. I'm finishing a deal for a song right now, and I'm going to get Jon to mix it with me. So love you guys. I'm going to jump on the Discord after. This will all be up in audio form tomorrow. It's here on my IGTV, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you guys so much. Peace out from London.
Peace.
Bye-bye.